Hello, my name is Christine. Welcome to Book Talk. Today we are discussing Carrie Soto is Back by Taylor Jenkins Reid. This is Taylor Jenkins Reid's latest release. You definitely know her. She wrote The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, Daisy Jones and the Six, Malibu Rising, and a backlist that I still have yet to read. I think she is such an enormously talented writer, and I was so incredibly excited for this release. And I just, all of Taylor Jenkins Reid's books that I've read have spectacular audiobooks. I did read Evelyn Hugo with my eyeballs, but I do know that everyone told me it had a great audiobook. So far, my favorite of hers is Malibu Rising, and then Evelyn Hugo, and then Daisy Jones, but I loved them all. When I started Carrie Soto, I thought I didn't like it as much. This is about a tennis player named Carrie Soto, and she holds the record for the most slams, which is a tennis competition. You know, I don't know much about tennis. Please give me some grace there. I don't know what I'm talking about. I just know what I know from reading the book. Carrie Soto is 37 at the start of the book. This takes place in 1994. I love that Taylor Jenkins Reid likes to write all throughout recent history. Usually when you read a historical novel, we're going back to like the 1800s or the 1800s. It's usually the 1800s, isn't it? We're going back to recent history, like in Malibu Rising, we're in the 60s and 70s. In Evelyn Hugo, we're in the 50s and 60s. In Carrie Soto is Back, we're in the 80s. Actually, I think the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, and today. She holds the record. I think she has 19 slam wins, and then she retired at age 32. Now she's 37, and there is another tennis player who is about to beat her record. She worked so hard to get that record, and she doesn't want to watch it be beat. So she's coming out of retirement to compete in 4 different slams and hopefully win one so she can hold the record still. And if she wins, she will be the oldest woman to ever win a slam. Another thing Taylor Jenkins Reid is extremely good at is writing through different eras and decades and just seamlessly putting them together. And it hits you in the most impactful, emotional way. She's so good! She's so talented! She takes a slice of history and creates a beautiful story with it that moves you in so many different ways, and you have no idea where it's gonna go, and then it goes here and there and everywhere, and you're just so impressed. So why did I think I didn't like this? And I'm still like, I could feel myself coming around to it, and I've been listening to it all day. So I listened to like the first hour or so, and I was iffy on it, and then we really started to get into her comeback, and I find myself just tearing up at the weirdest times. You know, there's a lot about doing this thing that you love so much and competing, the different aspects of competing in terms of like how it affects your body in these negative ways sometimes, and how that affects your mindset, and how winning affects you, and how losing. It's just, there's so many little details that will randomly hit me, and the fact that she's coming back at an older age with an older body, and it's going to be so much harder to win. Her emotional growth has been so stunted because her entire life has just pinpointed on tennis, and outside of tennis she doesn't really know what to do with herself. She describes it at one point as someone who spent her life at war and didn't know what to do with herself during peacetime, and now she's back at war and she feels amazing, like she feels alive again. I have so many feelings. I am really enjoying it now. I have like 4.5 hours left on it. This is a story about her love for tennis, and it's a story about the relationship between Carrie and her father. In the beginning, she's not the most likable character, which is another reason why at first I was like, I don't know. She's so focused on winning. She's so ambitious. And when you're that ambitious, it comes with these personality side effects that aren't very warm or welcoming. Like, she's pretty cold, she's pretty cutthroat, and she's not very nice. Like, she's just not nice. She doesn't have much grace with her winning, and she doesn't have any patience with herself for losing. She has to learn so much. And I know she's going to. Like, I can feel it. She kind of reminds me of the human version of Manon from Throne of Glass. If you give a bitch a puppy, that whole ordeal that I had with Manon, like, Carrie Soto is different, but she has the same cold outlook on life almost. She's driven solely by ambition. It clouds almost every other aspect of her emotions. Even though she's not a bad person, it enables her to keep herself distant from everyone and everything that could bring warmth and comfort to her life. And it's really sad. She's so cut off from everything else. Her father keeps telling her, like, to keep her heart open. She's constantly protecting herself from getting hurt instead of opening her heart to any romantic interest that might come to her path, or any friendship, like any relationships that aren't blood related, that isn't her dad, is not something that she will ever prioritize over her career or tennis, is what we're at the moment. I also love that she's coming back to defend her title. I think that like this is what she is meant to do, because she's kind of stunted with the way that she left the game because of her knee. She had an injury and she started losing, and she didn't want to go out as like a loser, so she retired. I'm gonna go into spoilers now. That was a lot of time that wasn't spoilery. If you haven't read it yet, I think it's definitely worth picking up. And if you don't want to read it with your eyes, audiobook is fantastic, so go get it. If you don't want to be spoiled, leave, come back, and we can discuss it, okay? Bye! Alright. Let's talk about Beau! I am so glad that her sparring partner ended up being Beau. I don't remember if he makes an appearance in Malibu Rising, but I know that the guy that she had dated at one point was the guy that... Never mind. I'm not saying what it is. That's a spoiler. As soon as Beau became her sparring partner, I was like, oh, tension. I don't even care if they are only ever friends, because she's never had a friend before. And it's like, if you give someone a friend, it changes everything. All you need is one good friend to change your life and change your perspective on so many things that you were closed off to before. And I love it for her. I love it. I love that dinner that they have where she's like, are we friends? Like, can we tell each other things? And like, by things, she wants to give him criticism on his game and ask for criticism on hers back. I'm excited for them to talk about more than just the game. I want them to talk about feelings. I want them to just open up about everything. I want her to be open because she's so close. All she ever talks about is tennis and injuries and tennis. So she has this reputation of being called the battle axe because she's mean. She almost has no empathy for the people she's playing. She'll go out of her way to look at it from the lens of winning instead of the lens of being a human being. So if someone has an injury, she'll exploit the injury purposefully, and she'll celebrate when their injury takes them out of the game. And I know there's like a part of you when you're an athlete that's relieved when you don't have to play someone who's gonna beat you, but it's still horrible to see someone who spent their entire life trying to be the best at this, just like she is, get hurt and have to be taken out of the game that way. It's devastating. And she's had an injury take her out. So I'm waiting for her to realize how cold-hearted she's been in the past. And we hear newscasters point it out and call her a bitch. They should not be calling her a bitch. That's horrible. But she is mean at a lot of moments. And she's mean to people who talk to her. Like, someone was like, oh, don't bother talking to her. We're beneath her. And she's like, well, you were lower than me on the rankings, so technically you are beneath me. And I'm like, Carrie! And I don't know if this is a thing that dudes do. Like, are they cruel and cold in sports and, like, no one cares? I mean, I bet no one would care. But I don't think that they shouldn't be fucking cruel and cold either. Nobody should. Sportsmanship! This should be taught to you as a child. I just listened to that scene where Beau is like, you are a quitter, Carrie. And she's like, what are you talking about? She retired and she had her injury and never came back. And he fought through all of his injuries and just kept playing, never left the game because it's what he loved, and he didn't want to stop playing because he was losing, and she can't handle losing. I mean, I think ultimately, like, again, I haven't finished yet, she is not gonna win. Which is gonna be really sad. I really want to see her win. I want to see her grow. Beau has been pointing out from the beginning, she has to accept that she's different now, and she can't be the player that she was before, but she could be a new version of herself, the evolved version of herself, and she could still play the best game. Like, her dad points out the fact that her best game of tennis is still ahead of her, and she's like, that's a nice thing to say, but it's probably not. But I believe him because she has not reached her full potential as a human in terms of being the best person she can be. Beau keeps pointing out that her mental game needs work, and it does. Like, she's too stubborn to realize that it makes a difference how you look at yourself in the game and how you look at other people and how you treat other people and how you treat them and yourself in respect to the game matters. During this moment, like when he's telling her this, that she needs to work on her mental game, and she's like, shut up, let's just play. It's the day that people start watching them practice, and she doesn't want to be watched. She wants to practice with no one around in privacy, and Beau is winning that match, and she's like, can we stop and reschedule and just come back later when no one's watching? Then they come back later, and she's winning the match, and she's teasing him, and he gets really upset because he was winning earlier, and she couldn't handle it, so she needed to reschedule it. And that's why she rescheduled, not because people are watching her, or because people are watching her and they're gonna see her lose. The very fact that she needed to practice without people watching her means she needs to work on her mental game. She has blinders to her own weaknesses. If her dad doesn't point it out, then she doesn't want to accept that it's real. And since Beau is the person that keeps mentioning this to her, and she thinks she's better than him, she's not letting any of that really sink in. He recommended this book about tennis. I forget what it's called, but he talks about how there's self number one and self number two. And self number one is the person that's like, get your shit together, do this, win. And self number two is the you that's actually doing everything, that's actually doing the work and running and trying to win. And the other self is that voice in your head that's telling you, come on, do harder, you can do it. When she's losing her first match in Melbourne to Cortez, she keeps telling herself, you have to go harder, you have to be Carrie Soto that they remember. It's completely contradictory to this really great conversation she had with Beau, where he was like, the difference between us is that you're trying to be the old you, and I've accepted the limitations of my age, and I'm working to strategize to play differently, to play to my limitations. Take advantage of what I can do versus fighting to do what I can't and then losing because I can't do those things. It's not sinking into her. I'm waiting for it to happen, and I know it's going to, but it's so hard to watch her fall back into this same pattern of stubbornness. I keep thinking Beau's name is Brandon. Brandon did have a cameo. I love the first scene when Carrie's coming back and she's talking to, I don't know, her assistant, whoever that woman is, telling her to get her someone to hit with her, and none of the female players want to hit with her because she's mean. She's not friendly. Her dad focused most of her childhood on how to be a tennis player, how to be the best tennis player, and it's almost sociopathic the way that she treats people, because it's always just about the game. It's not about their humanity. She has so much growing to do, and she's doing it at 37. Like, she's coming of age at 37. This is like a coming into yourself story, and I love that this can happen at any age, and like you can come into your own again and again, because we're all human and you don't come into your own just once. And that's something that you don't really understand, I feel like, when you're first coming of age. Like when I was in my late teens, you think you've come of age. Like when you're 18, you're like, oh, I've found myself, kind of. You're like, not really, but you feel like you know everything. Like Taylor Swift talks about this all the time, and I relate to it so much. You feel like you figured it all out. And then you go to college, and the deeper in you get, the more confused you get. You're like, never mind, I don't know anything about anything. I'm not, how do I do an adult? How do I be? And then you get out of college, you find yourself eventually. And then you get to your late 20s and you're like, I don't know what's happening, I'm gonna be 30. Then you need to find yourself again. Like, you find yourself in so many different ways. Like, she's found herself in her sport, but she hasn't found any human connection. She hasn't found herself as a person with feelings. Like, she hasn't opened that vein of herself up at all. I love watching that start to happen. It gives me so many feelings. And I love her dad, and I feel so bad for him when she gets a different coach, and his whole coaching style, everything was focused on making it so she didn't hurt herself. He was meticulously careful about the way that she did things so that she wouldn't injure herself and cut off her career before she had to. And then she switches coaches and immediately she fucks up her knees, and that's what he messed up. And that's why he couldn't keep playing tennis. And that must have been gut-wrenching for him to watch. And he tries to tell her that she's gonna mess up her knees, landing the way she's landing and doing the jumps she's doing with this new coach. She doesn't care. She just like, it's fine. But like, how could you say that when you know that your dad had that injury? Because he played professional tennis too. Oof. Okay, we're at the French Open, and Beau hurt himself. He ripped the cartilage between his ribs. Very upsetting. He's staying to watch Carrie play, and Carrie is now playing Antonovich. Her dad yesterday was like, you have to play to your strength. The same thing they've been saying the whole fucking time. I'm afraid she's gonna lose this match, because he's like, you have to slow her down. She's very fast. You're not as fast as her. And she's like, I can be as fast as her. It's just the same stupid shit. No, play to your strengths so that you know you can beat her. He's like, use what you have over her to win instead of trying to match what she has that you don't. And she's still like, no, I can match her. And she trains for hours and hours before, the day before, and then the day of, right now, she's like trying to jump higher and whip the ball faster and meet her fucking speed. And it's making me anxious. I had to pause and go talk to you. You are either a champion or a fuck up. There is no in between. Like, stop it, Carrie. You need to stop and grow, and you need to do it now. Oh my gosh. I love also that, like, Nikki adores her, it seems like. She was like a role model for Nikki. It's just so immature of Carrie. The fact that she's looking coldly upon Nikki, who's the best right now and who's coming for her title, is so sad. Because this woman's younger than you. This woman looked up to you. This woman is very good at her craft. She works very hard at it. Every time they see each other, she smiles and waves at her. Carrie's like, ugh, I tried to smile when I waved at her. And it's like, come on. You're not 21. You're 37. You've learned you should be past that by now. Take a deep breath and take off the competitive lens for a second. This is someone who respects you. Again, like, her progress is happening very slowly. She just beat Antonovich at Wimbledon, and it just was like so beautiful to watch her finally play to her strengths and let go of her stubborn insistence on trying to be who she was before. She had drinks with Nikki, which was wonderful. They had a good talk. They make each other better. You have to have a nemesis that is up to par with you to spar with to get better. And that was beautiful. I do think that she kind of turned on a dime. I really would have liked a little bit more of a scene where she realized that she's been ignoring what everyone's been saying about her. She tells her dad about her plan to defeat Antonovich over the phone. He's in the hospital, which is really sad, but Beau's with him, which makes me really happy. She tells him the plan, and she's like, is that what you would have said too? And it's like, literally, he said that when you played her in Paris. Like, the exact same thing, and you ignored it. And you're saying it like this is brand new information, and no, it's not. He told you this already, and Beau told you this already. And she finally listened when he was like, have you thought about self 1 and self 2? It's like, yeah, have you? Why didn't you read that book? Why didn't you read it right after Paris? It was like she had to lose in Paris and lose the title to really start to see clearly what was in front of her and what she was doing wrong and the way that she was thinking about things. To become self-aware, she had to lose the title. And now she has a chance to tie it if she wins either the US Open or Wimbledon, and Wimbledon is her place. She holds the record for most wins at Wimbledon, which is like, you failed to mention that. You still hold a huge record. I really hope she wins at Wimbledon. I really, really hope she does. I still haven't finished. I have like an hour left, but I have to go to sleep soon. I'll check in when I actually do finish. And I'm really glad she finally let Beau in, and they're kind of dating, even though he's home with her dad for like a month, so they're really undefined. There's something there, and they both know it. Beau is so sweet. I'm happy she's coming around. I just feel like it was like, bing! Oh, I see clearly now, the rain is gone. And that's fine. Losing Paris was huge. That's an enormous loss, and it would have changed her perspective because she lost her record. But I wish there was just a scene where it specifically clicked, like where she thought about it for a second and it clicked, because it was like all of a sudden she spun around and she saw Beau outside her hotel room and she hugged him or something. I forget. Now there's a lot of hotel rooms with Beau, but like, oh, she told him that he should learn Spanish so that he can understand her dad and her and a lot of other people. And he found someone who spoke Spanish in the lobby and had them translate 4 different sayings that he could possibly say to her, which is so cute because there's no cell phones. And he wrote them down on a piece of paper, and it was like, you are already perfect with all your imperfections. He also had them translate like, I think about you all the time, or like, I can't stop thinking about you, and like, basically I'm in love with you. It was so adorable and so sweet. And they finally slept together and held hands and went out in the open together. They watched Nikki win Paris together. It was really sweet. And she's like, yeah, she deserved it. The lack of self-awareness when she was having drinks with Nikki, and she was like, do you know what it's like to work your whole life for something and then have someone come in and take it away from you? I was just like, are you kidding me? Of course she realizes it after Nikki's like, yeah, you're doing the exact same thing to her. And she's like, you stole my record. And Nikki's like, I earned it just like you did. What are you talking about? It's just like she has to hear herself say stupid shit out loud. Her lack of self-awareness is baffling. It's baffling. She needs some therapy. She goes to all these places, but she doesn't talk to anyone for real. She only talks about tennis. She just needs time to be a regular human, and I hope that she's open to that after this. I'm sure she will be. Sure, we're to art to that point. I'm so happy that I'm almost done with it. Like, and I can say I finished another Taylor Jenkins Reid book because I've been looking at it for weeks and being like, I want to know what's in that book. I want to know the story. I hate not knowing it. And now I do. Ooh. I'm very curious if anyone knows about tennis. Like, loosely, is this based loosely on someone's story or a combination of different players' stories? Does anyone know about tennis in the 80s and 1994? Let me know, please. I'd love to know. It was so good. I've just been crying throughout the entire US Open. She won Wimbledon, and it was fucking beautiful. That last match with Nikki was just so good, and I just knew, you just know that what her dad said about her playing her best game was right there. Because it doesn't matter if you win in the end, if you're playing the best game you've ever played. You win. I love that she's her coach. I love that she stayed to watch Beau play his last match, and I love how well he did in the US Open. I love that the two of them were just killing it for Javier. It was really good. I love that the last... It ends with Nikki, her watching Nikki, and she's like, she's gonna do it. She swings, and then it's cut to black. I'm sure she did do it. I love that moment during their 50th tiebreaker at the US Open. They're just sitting next to each other during the break, waiting to go back out there for the last tiebreaker. That moment where she's just like, okay with losing because she lost the best player in the world and they played the most beautiful game. I never looked at tennis like this. I love the way that this has opened up how tennis works for me because I had no idea. You just don't have any idea, obviously, unless you've played tennis, how the game works and how it feels to be on the court and all that stuff. And the way that they look at the ball and all that shit is something that I've never thought about, and I loved that. Fuck, it was so good. I knew the second that she and her dad turned on the match between Nikki and Cortez at the Wimbledon match that Cortez was gonna win, not Nikki. And for a second I was like, shit, she's not prepped for Cortez, but her dad is there obviously to be like, you've already beat Cortez, you know how to beat Cortez, this is great news. I love the cover. I fucking love this cover. It's beautiful. At first you kind of look at it and you're like, it's just a woman looking up at the skies, but I love the context in the book when she talks about how much she loves the sun and the dry heat. It feels like her reveling in the joy of tennis. I love that the last match she was playing, she's like, this is so much fun. I'm just having the best time. I love when her dad points out that during the match with Cortez, she was smiling throughout the whole third set. Like, I love that she's found the joy of tennis again, instead of letting the stress of the game and her own ambition cloud her ability to be happy. I love that everything's going well with Beau. I love that she finally came to terms with the fact that they love each other. I love how he tells her he loves her on the court after his last match. I love how everyone clapped for him. All these moments hit so hard and so beautifully. Fucking loved it. I don't know if I like this more than Daisy Jones. I can't tell right now. I feel like only time will tell. But I fucking loved it. It was a slow burn for me in terms of how much I was invested in the story and the character. I loved those flowers that Nikki sent her after she won Wimbledon. So good. I love that there was these moments where Nikki got very mad on the court because she hadn't beat Carrie yet and had to come to terms with the fact that she is really, really good still. I just loved it. It was fucking fantastic, and I'd love to hear your thoughts. Now back to non-Terry has yet to finish Christine. I'd love to hear all your thoughts on Carrie Soto's back, where it ranks for you in the Taylor Jenkins Reid book universe.
My name's Christine. I'm actually an author as well.
I write rom-com books. My first novel is called Again But Better. It's about a college student who studies abroad.
My other book is called Better Together. It's about two sisters who haven't seen each other in 13 years, and they cross paths, and they also both end up falling for different people. It's a grand old time.
And I'm currently working on my third book, and I have a whole book writing video blog series if you want to check that out. I post videos every Sunday. I will see you next time. Thanks for watching. Goodbye!